and happy.
Yep. All right. How we start this meeting out is we do the third step prayer. So, Rob, if you would help me with that, please.
I would be honored to. The third step prayer, which you can find on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, we are on page XXII, and this is the forward to the third edition. And Rob, if you'll get us started at the beginning there.
It would be my honor. Everybody, again, we're on page XXII of your big book, forward to the third edition. By March 1976, when this edition went to the printer, the total worldwide membership of Alcoholics Anonymous was conservatively estimated at more than 1 million, with almost 28,000 groups meeting in over 90 countries. Surveys of groups in the United States and Canada indicate that AA is reaching out not only to more and more people, but to a wider and wider range. Women now make up more than 1/4 of the membership. Among newer members, the proportion is nearly 1/3. 7% of the AA surveyed are less than 30 years of age, among them, many in their teens.
We'll keep going.
Keep going? Okay. The basic principles of the AA program, it appears, I just want to let these people in.
Oh, yeah.
Hold good for individuals with many different lifestyles, just as a program has brought recovery to those of many different nationalities. The 12 steps that summarize the program may be called Los Dos Pesos in one country, Le Deux Estapes in another, but they trace exactly the same path to recovery that was blazed by the earliest members of Alcoholics Anonymous. In spite of the great increase in the size and the span of this fellowship, at its core, it remains simple and personal. Each day, somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope.
Absolutely. So I think the message we want to gain from forward of the third edition is the acknowledgement to the increase in the demographics of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not only are we gaining in numbers, but the idea behind that we've got women, we have different nationalities, different faiths, different creeds are all starting to join in Alcoholics Anonymous at a point where there are real numbers that you can actually count. And the younger generations are starting to also take note and become a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what's really important about that, and it's something that if you are with me for any length of time, you're going to find, and that is you know, when you look at the meetings that we have right now, there are times where more than half of the group are women, and I couldn't be happier about that idea. This started out to be largely a very male, very low bottom. I'll use that word or that phrase loosely, but really men that were, you know, at their worst were being brought into the program, and that was predominantly what was being what was the makeup of AA. Whereas today, it is all walks of life, and I use that one very strongly. You know, obviously, we've got people from all over the world in this meeting today, which is just incredible. A couple of points on a personal level. I joined a meeting several years ago, and I turned out I was like the second youngest in that group, and it bugged me. In fact, I was jealous. There were these predominantly above 70, a lot of 80, and there was a couple of 90-year-old people in this group, and they were, you know, 10 and 15 years sober, and, you know, that seemed like a lifetime to me. But then again, I would count down and I'd go, well, you're 85. That means you got to drink until you were 70. Well, I was, you know, barely 50 at that point, not even actually. So I was always thinking to myself how they got to go all the way until they were 70 before they stopped drinking. And I bring that up because we do make a point here for those that are in their less than 30 years of age, and or some of the younger folks that are out there. There's a lot of people I've heard that would say, you know, I'm only 26 and I'm already here, and I'm not going to get to drink anymore because I can't, you know, control it. I can't, you know, I have no control over alcohol. Well, first of all, I look at them as being like, they actually have a better deal than what I had. And when talking with a younger person, I always try to accentuate the fact that it took me and my ignorance and my drinking until I was, you know, in my 50s before I finally stopped. Um, you know, thank goodness they get to enjoy life the way that we're enjoying life at a much earlier age, so their life is going to be that much more fulfilling. So I just want to bring this up to make sure that, you know, Forward to the Third Edition is really that acknowledgement to the all walks of life and all types of folks that are starting to get involved in AA, and it is continued, and we'll see that as we go along. All right, Rob.
Perfect. Let me just let Peter in, and then we'll get on to the Forward to the Fourth Edition, which is on page XXIII, everybody. This fourth edition of Alcoholics Anonymous came off the press in November 2001, at the start of the new millennium. Since the third edition was published in 1976, worldwide membership of AA has just about doubled to an estimated 2 million or more, with nearly 100,800 groups meeting in approximately 150 countries around the world. Literature has played a major role in AA's growth, and a striking phenomenon of the past quarter century has been the explosion of translations of our basic literature into many languages and dialects. In country after country where the AA seed was planted, it has taken root, slowly at first, then growing by leaps and bounds when literature has become available. Currently, Alcoholics Anonymous has been translated into 43 languages. As the message of recovery has reached larger numbers of people, it has also touched the lives of a vastly greater variety of suffering alcoholics. When the phrase, "we are people who normally would not mix," page 17 of this book, was written in 1939, it referred to a fellowship composed largely of men and a few women, with quite similar social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. Like so much of AA's basic text, those words have proved to be far more visionary than the founding members could ever have imagined. The stories added to this edition represent a membership whose characteristics of age, gender, race, and culture have widened and deepened to encompass virtually everyone the first 100 members could have hoped to reach. With our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message, sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in new customs and practices within the fellowship. Taking advantage of technological advances, for example, AA members with computers can participate in meetings online, sharing with fellow alcoholics across the country or around the world. In any meeting anywhere, AA share experience, strength, and hope with each other in order to stay sober and help other alcoholics. Modem to modem or face to face, AA speak the language of the heart in all its power and simplicity.
Absolutely. So the important message here with regard to the Forward to the Fourth Edition, not only have they basically doubled in membership over this period of time, and we've gone from 43, and if you take a note down at the bottom, it's actually more than 70 languages, and it's even more so at this point, and we're well beyond 150 countries as well. One of the things that I highlighted was in the last paragraph, that first sentence that basically says, while our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message, sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in new customs and practices within the fellowship. And it goes on to talk about the technology advances and the things that have happened there. That couldn't be any more apparent than within the last 2 years, especially with this pandemic. And quite honestly, Zoom has just created one heck of a platform. And it has given us the ability to carry the message out to so many more people. And no matter the limitations of being out and about and face-to-face meetings and the like, you're able to get online and actually have a meeting where you literally are almost face-to-face and we can see each other. I also have a note at the bottom here, and this is something that I've found that I like to share with folks that I think is very, very important. And it is this: the message never changes. It always stays the same. The only thing that changes is the fellowship and the way we carry that said message. So it's important to kind of note here that we still abide by what's in the book and the program of recovery that is outlined in Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do it differently now in that we actually use technology to our advantage, and it's something that's quite incredible if you really sit back and think about just how easy and how effective it is to get the message out to those that are in need. Rob?
Excellent point. And on both the 3rd edition and the 4th edition, they talk about step 12, basically, in that one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. You know, we pass on our experience, strength, and hope for those that are still suffering. Remember, the idea is that when we go to fellowship or to meetings, it's what can I bring to a meeting, not what I can get. So I like to pass that on to everybody. So now we're going to move into one of the most incredible chapters that I think that is in the book is the doctor's opinion. So we are on page XXV, everybody, the doctor's opinion. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter.
Yep, and just so that we are all clear on this, and most everybody knows this, although I'm sure that there's a few that are still getting to know this, but we're talking about the famed Dr. Silkworth, and he was a very prominent physician working at a hospital that did in fact specialize in alcoholic and drug addiction. So this is someone that was using medical procedures and components to treat folks with addictions and alcoholism, and he, you'll see it throughout the book here, but especially in this letter, his acknowledgement that something beyond just the medical is an important component. But he does give us this ability to start to explain this, not only from our perspective, but also giving it some credence from the medical community. Rob?
This letter that we're just going to be reading next was a letter that was intended to be sent out to donors because Bill was looking to build hospitals, have missionaries go around to different places in order to carry this message, and for the book to be published. So this letter, the first idea was that it was be sent to donors in order to try to raise some money. Dr. Silkworth, who is classified as a saint to most of the people in AA. He was born in 1873 and died in 1951. His specialty was a neurologist or a brain doctor. And he lost all his money in the stock market. So he had to come out of retirement. And that's why he ended up at Towns Hospital. So remember the time frame. Stock market crash of 1929. A lot of people lost their life savings. Dr. Silkworth was one of them. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless.
Okay, and real quick, we're talking now about this competent businessman is Bill Wilson. And I also wanted to just highlight two things. One, the competent businessman, and then two is the I had come to regard as hopeless. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. Rob?
In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered.
Okay, and there's a couple of things here as well. One is that he's acquired certain ideas. These ideas did not come from Dr. Silkworth. He was working with the Oxford group and a few of the other folks that had come in to talk to him, Ebby, his longtime friend, etc., had given him these ideas and these concepts. And then the other part here is that he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise and with still others. We're going to find that one of the most important elements of recovery is that working with other people. Nothing actually helps an alcoholic more than working with other folks. And the last thing I want to bring up here, and we'll talk about this in a couple of different instances here, but it also talks here that he has recovered. And there is some controversy behind the word recovered, but there are a group of us that believe that you can actually recover from alcoholism. You'll always be an alcoholic, but you can recover from alcoholism. Rob?
Yeah, that's the sixth time that recovered is used so far in what we've read. The other thing that I'd like to bring out, which was something I could never, it took me a long time to grasp. The idea is that Bill is in the treatment center for the third time. This time, Dr. Silkworth allows Bill to work with other alcoholics, to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise. And I could never figure out why the guy's in treatment for the third time. Why would a doctor let a patient show other alcoholics a means of what he thinks is going to be recovered? And then it was pointed out to me. Dr. Silkworth noticed an incredible change in Bill. Similar to the fact that when Bill met with Ebby, which we will find out later in the book, Bill noticed something in Ebby's eyes. Something had changed, something drastic. Dr. Silkworth noticed something different in Bill. And he thought, you know what? I'm not having a lot of success with the real alcohol, somebody that is having a lot of difficulty. But this man has changed. So that's why he allowed Bill. And I, as I say, I found that fascinating. I hope you do too. And if you don't, well, I'm sorry. My enthusiasm spills over about it. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibility of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves.
Absolutely.
Yours, very truly yours, Dr. William D. Silkworth, MD.
Absolutely. One of the best parts of this particular passage that we just read is I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. In other words, they were far beyond what any medical intervention was able to actually help and make sure and help ensure that they never went back to drink or to other substances. So again, this is Dr. William D. Silkworth, MD. Rob?
Now, the doctor had the humility in order to say, Bill may have an answer that can help a lot of people that we haven't been able to help. And that says an awful lot about this doctor. The physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete.
Absolutely. And what we're talking about here is the physical allergy to alcohol. In other words, once we start drinking, we can't stop. And we will learn that in spades going forward with regard to the allergy itself. But there is also a reference up here to where I've underlined that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. This is also a reference to the malady, even though it's a light reference to it. We're going to basically, in this passage, we've already addressed to the two symptoms of alcoholism, which is the malady and the allergy. But right now we're focusing more on the allergy itself. That's what I've got. Rob?
Perfect. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-pro drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account.
And I think what's important here, and you hear it again and again, that somebody will say that not until somebody said to me that you seem to be suffering from an allergy to alcohol, and that allergy is once you start, you can't stop. Or the other part of it, which is the malady, which is there's no matter how much you try, no matter how much you are your conviction to not drink, you then find yourself drinking. When people start to hear that is when the light bulb goes off and they're like, you know what, that now makes sense to me. Because before, and this is one of the things that we have trouble with, especially in some of the fellowships and or those that are not as educated, meaning family members and friends that are around us that say, you know, why can't you just stop drinking? You know, what's wrong with you? How come you can't just put the bottle down and walk away from it? When you start, why can't you just drink like a normal person and stop when you've had one or two or maybe even 3 drinks at most? The bottom line is that doesn't make sense to us because we don't understand it either. We're baffled, just like everybody else is. But when you actually start to talk to somebody about this physical allergy and about this, you know, malady of the mind, that starts to make sense to us alcoholics. And that's when you start to try and that's when you become educated and start to learn as to this ailment that you have, this disease that we suffer from. So it's really important to kind of absorb this, because not only are you in need of this education and this learning and this understanding of what this is, but you need to be able to carry it out and this message over to somebody else that's a newcomer to the program, so that they can begin to get past this baffling feature of alcoholism. Rob?
Perfect, Leo. Though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, as he then has a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. The doctor writes.
We'll stop there for a second. This isn't kind of I'm going to call this a commercial break. The last thing you want to do is to approach an alcoholic when they're deep in the throes of being drunk. They just are not going to be receptive to an intervention, if you will. However, you know, and what I also want to say is that if somebody needs to go to treatment in order to get some time away from alcohol, please do so. I know that you're going to hear in some instances that people spend $30,000 in a treatment center and then they leave, and the next thing you know, they're drinking again. Well, I tell you what, I'm not saying, I am not going to advocate whether you should or shouldn't go to treatment. I think that that is up to you, your physician, your family, your friends, et cetera. And I think that you need to decide on what's best for you. And I know that there are plenty of folks that do go to treatment centers and then come out and embrace the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they do quite well. So whatever works to get you to a point so that you're not drinking and that you are truly sober, not just a dry drunk, but truly sober, I would encourage and want you to be a part of. So with that, I just want to say that first and foremost, make sure that you've got somebody that is they may be hungover, but wait until they've finished what they will call here a debacle, and before you approach them and attempt to educate them on the program of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Perfect. Remember the time frame. 1939 is when this book was published. At that time, there were three groups: the Cleveland group, the Akron group, and the New York group. And they would take people into their homes to detox them. They would give them a drink every few hours in order so that they wouldn't go through delirium tremors. Things have changed drastically in our time frame. Now we have lots of detoxes. We have a lot of treatment centers. Getting into the treatment centers can be difficult. Getting into the detox centers can be difficult at times. I know that in my area in Toronto, there's an awful lot of people say, well, I want to get into detox, but there's no room right now. You know, I have to wait a little bit of time, which is so frustrating, because you know what, when we hit bottom, we want the help to come right now, and it doesn't always come right now. And that, as I say, is the frustrating part. But remember, in 1939, they would bring these people into their home. We'll talk about in Bill's story a little bit later about his bed having cigarette burns, fires started, people committing suicide because they see no way out. These terrible things happen in these people's homes. Nowadays, we send them off to detox. So the doctor writes, the subject presented in this book seems to be, to me, to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcohol addiction. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was therefore a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages.
We'll keep going, Rob.
Okay. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge.
Absolutely. And this last section here, I did highlight, we doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, and through to the end there where it ends at knowledge. If you go to page 162, about a third of the way down, there's a reference back to this, and it says, every few days, this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. Now, that's another point to note here, and that is that you actually have doctors, in this case, Dr. Silkworth, who are hand selecting particular patients of his to be a part of AA. If you remember in the foreword that there was a like demographic of the person that they were choosing, and they were very much in their low bottom type of person, but somebody that showed some level of promise. So in the very beginning, a lot of AA members were being handpicked to be a part of this, and there was also, and we'll see this later on, but there was also some qualifiers. They would go through kind of an interview process in order to qualify and be a part of AA. And this is back at a time when there were more requirements than the desire to stop drinking, which is the only requirement that we have today, which is important because had we had more requirements and had they carried over, can you imagine how few people would have actually got into the program as compared to what we have when you only have one requirement, and that is the desire to stop drinking. But I did want to bring that up as an important point here, and of the time that we're reading from. Rob?
In moral psychology, I did a little bit of research on the moral psychology. Moral psychology is change mind or thinking. It was founded in the 1930s. AA is an early sort of moral psychology which attracted the interest of people like Carl Jung. They assert that alcoholism is not a moral failing, but a disease. Paradoxically, alcoholism can only be cured by a complete moral renovation. So I just thought that'd be interesting. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital. And while here, he acquired some ideas, which he put into practical application at once. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men, as we have come to know them, the entire absence of profit motive, and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death.
So a couple of points here. One is that with some misgiving, we consented. So you can imagine the doctors allowing somebody into their practice, into the walls of their facility, to come in and actually start to work with their patients and find some success, obviously, with that working, and also it not being a medical approach. So I could certainly see how this took some convincing to get the doctors to consent to allow this to actually happen. And I also assume here that because Bill and his group did not want anything in return with regard to profit or money or anything like that, that probably helped as well. Had they come in and said that they wanted to do this and do this in a way that was going to make money, I doubt that they would have allowed them to do anything. But the last thing I wanted to bring up here in this, or the last part of this paragraph that we just read, and that they believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. So obviously we're talking about the higher power here, and we'll learn more about that later, and which some people do in fact call God. So it's one of the first references that we're going to make to that higher power that we're going to learn about as we go forward. Rob?
And again, I just want to point it out again that the doctor saw such a drastic change in Bill from his treatment number 1, treatment number 2, to treatment number 3. That's such a profound difference that he thought this man has found something that he can pass along. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, Their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve.
Okay, so one of the first paragraphs that I am going to tell you to highlight and put an asterisk by. It's incredibly important to understand this. This is the first symptom of alcoholism, and that is the allergy, and it's the first real definition of it. So we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class, and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. I mean, how many people in this room right now have looked over at somebody that takes a drink of a glass of wine, and they stop when they're only about half to three-fourths of the way through, and they're done? I just sit there and think to myself, you're crazy. There's still more to drink. And not only that, but they can stop after a glass, or maybe even a glass and a half or two. And I'm just getting started. I will tell you this, and this is very true of me. Not only was I working through the day, looking at the time, figuring out how best to finish up whatever I was doing for that particular day so that I could start my drinking as early as possible. But by the time I got to that first drink, and I'm talking the first drink of the first glass of whatever I was drinking, I was already thinking about my fourth drink. Already thinking about my fourth drink, because I knew I was gonna be able to maneuver with people around me. Those first two or three drinks, nobody was going to care. Everybody was going to be kind of like, well, it's normal. It was that fourth drink and beyond that I was starting to get anxious about, because I was going to have to either start to sneak, hide, or somehow keep my composure, because obviously I'm an alcoholic and I know what the outcome is going to be. Even though here I am drinking, I'm still going to find that that is going to be problematic. But it was this phenomenon of craving that I could not control. I had no control over it. Once I started drinking, I couldn't stop until I either passed out or I ran out of alcohol. And it was rare that I would run out of alcohol, because I would already have made sure that there was enough in the house to carry me through as long as necessary. And oh, by the way, when I say that I thought that people would not care for those first two or three drinks that I was going to have in the evening, the fact is that as soon as I picked up a glass, before I even took the first drink of that first drink, people were already getting anxious around me. They knew well before me that this was going to be a problem, and they were just cringing at what the outcome was going to be. But this paragraph is so important to the alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous. This is the first symptom of alcoholism, and that is the allergy, that phenomenon of craving, and that inability to stop once we got started. Rob?
Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices.
Can you say that one more time, Rob?
Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives.
Okay, so here we are looking at it from the fact that if I have no control over my drinking, and if I start and can't stop, then obviously I cannot fix self with self. We'll talk about that a lot going forward. But remember this right now, and that is that you're going to have to find this inner strength, this higher power that's above and beyond anything that you've ever had before, in order to be able to grab hold of sobriety and not drink. So right now, we're already referring to something bigger than you that's going to help you actually stop drinking. So we're going to call this your higher power, the power greater than themselves. Again, you're going to find that a lot of people will call that God, but it is a God of your choosing, and we will learn that as well as we go forward. But right now, we're just referencing it as a power greater than yourselves and or higher power. Rob?
Frothy emotional appeal that's people around us see that we're having problems with alcohol. We don't see it. We think we can control and enjoy our drinking. People, our wives, our husbands, our bosses, our co-workers, people that we're even drinking with are saying, you know what? I can't drink with you anymore. Man, crazy stuff happens. We end up getting into fights. We get into arguments with people. We run out of money. There's so many things could go on, but it's people are pleading with you, please give it up. It's not good for you. I don't know. You got to learn to do something about your drinking. But you know what? We think we can control it still at this point.
Sure do.
We don't realize how far we have gone past the point of no return. If any feel that a psychiatrist directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on a firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them.
Absolutely. And I think that we've gotten the definition of altruistic, meaning no payment, like charity. So it's an important note again here that this group, the Bill Wilson's group, wanted nothing in return other than for you to become sober. The other thing too is how committed Dr. Silkworth was in this time. He talks about not only being on the firing line, but also with all the tragedies around, and it's part of their daily work and even in their sleeping moments. I can only imagine some of the anguish that he felt in the futility that he had when he was working with certain alcoholics, and how hard it was to get through to him. And then to find this group that had this answer, this solution to the alcoholism, and was able to get through to some of even the worst of the worst in getting them sober. It must have been quite the experience to be a part of. Rob?
It's terrible when the wife goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, can you do anything for my husband? We're losing everything. We're behind our bills on our home. He's not spending any time with the kids. He's always drunk. What can you do for him?" And the doctor just shakes his head. Nothing we can do for him. Yeah. We can dry him out this time and send him on his way, but that's about all they could do. They found this 12-step program, and nothing was working better than that. So men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
Absolutely. The men and women drink essentially because they like the effects produced by alcohol. However, what are the effects that are produced in most cases are consequences. So that's one of the big things here. I came to AA because of the consequences. I actually got sober because of my consequences. They had become so great that I needed to do something. Furthermore, in here, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. This is the first reference here of the insanity, and we'll talk more about that as we go forward. If you I say this because of the consequences. I didn't really have a drinking problem. I had a consequence problem. And I think that that's going to be an important point that everybody should note. I hope that you relate to that, and that is why, because obviously if there were no consequences, I would still be drinking. So after they had succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful. I can't tell you how many times, especially in the latter stages of my drinking in the back, right before I stopped, that every time I drank, this feeling of regret and remorse and just guilt just overwhelmed me. Drinking ceased to be a pleasure at all for me. And in fact, it was really more of a nightmare because I just knew what was going to happen. And this firm resolution not to drink again. I mean, how many times have we promised ourselves that, and others, that we're not going to drink again? We're just not going to do it. And then find ourselves sometimes that very day, the next thing you know, you're drinking again. And last but not least, as we get to this, and that is experience an entire psychic change. This is one of the firm requirements in order to become sober, is that complete psychic change is what's necessary in order to get and embrace this program fully and become a sober person. Very little hope of your recovery, I would say, otherwise. Rob?
On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules.
Yeah. And so at the beginning here, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, okay, we're talking about an illness here. So it's a desire versus illness, and which equals you can't control it. All right. This illness is not controllable. So as strange as it may seem to those who do not understand, again, we're talking about those bystanders, whether they be family, friends, or others just observing somebody that's drinking to excess. How does that happen? Why does that happen? Again, the idea is, why can't you just put the glass down and walk away from it? Because of those temperate drinkers, we know that they have that ability to do that. They do not have this illness. They do not have this allergy and or this malady, and they can control their drinking, and they can decide to stop for any length of time. I will tell you this, when I stopped drinking, my wife stopped drinking. She was a temperate drinker. She would stop. In fact, she would drive me crazy because she would leave something in the glass. She would take forever to drink one glass of whatever it was she was drinking. And I kept thinking to myself, how come you're not drinking that faster? And how come you're not drinking all of that? Can't tell you how many times we'd get up from a table at a restaurant, for example, and there's this glass of whatever she was drinking again. It was still sitting there. And I would think to myself, my gosh, I can't understand that. So when I stopped drinking, largely, I mean, there's alcohol in the house now, but there was for a period of time no alcohol. But nonetheless, my wife just stopped. I mean, just stopped. And I was in awe. I couldn't understand it. So back to this part, this is definitely an illness. And for those that don't understand, they just don't understand. But once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, I'll tell you, I was on my way to a lot of loss. I was going to lose my job. I was going to lose my relationship with my wife. I was going to probably lose a lot of other things in a lot of legal issues and stuff. And I was successful in stopping, and I've been able to retain everything. So I've got to say that, who seemed doomed, like there's no way you're going to be able to get out of this. But once having that psychic change, all of a sudden now this person has hope. Rob?
Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach.
Can you imagine how hard it was for Dr. Silkworth and other doctors to come to this conclusion? And I'm not saying that they're not effective. You know, they certainly were able to bring a person in and get them dried out, if you will, and or away from alcohol for a period of time, and get them to a point where they're very receptive to whatever approach it was that they could impart on this person to stop drinking. And I underlined that first portion of what Rob just read with the men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal, doctor, I cannot go on like this. So, you know, the idea here is you've got a desperate person that truly wants to stop. And that's another important feature here in regards to recovery and becoming sober. And that is you have to truly want to stop. And because otherwise, if you don't really want to stop, then this program isn't right for you. You can just decide to, you know, keep drinking and go on. It's unfortunate, especially if you are a real alcoholic, and we'll learn more about that later as well. But the idea here is that a doctor can only do so much from a medical standpoint, and then there has to be a higher power that intervenes to get this person over the line, and that is that essential psychic change. And we'll continue to talk more about that as we go along. I'm going to stop right there today. I think that's a good place to stop. And what I'm going to do is ask our friend Bill from New Jersey if he'd like to add a few things for what we've covered today, please. Oops, I think I just muted you, Bill. I apologize. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I think I got it now.
You got it, Bill.
Hi, this is Bill. Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Happy New Year, everybody. And I hope everybody had a safe and sober New Year. Yeah, we read some good stuff here today. The forward to the third and the forward to the fourth edition. If you notice, they were written a little bit different than the forward to the first and the forward to the second. That's because by this time that the third edition came out, Bill Wilson had already passed away. So he didn't write those. Those were written by somebody else. I don't know who wrote them, but you can see a little bit that they're not the same. They're not as warm or whatever. In the first, the forward to the first, he used the word we 18 times. And in the forward to the second, he used the word we 10 times. In the third and the fourth, they don't use the word we at all. So something changed there a little bit because somebody else wrote it. And we got into the doctor's opinion. The doctor's opinion, to me, is one of the best things they put in this book. This guy was not an alcoholic, but he was capable of understanding what was going on with us. You know, this guy, he's considered a saint, and I consider him a saint too. And a lot of people are told, you know, read the first 164 pages, and they start at page 1. And the doctor's opinion is in the Roman numeral section. You really, really, really need to go over this. And I would suggest go over it more than once. Read it a few times so that this stuff sinks in. And like was mentioned in here a couple times, and Leo mentioned it, one of the most important things is to get the alcohol out of the alcoholic. If you're trying to deal with somebody that's still under the influence of alcohol, you're not going to get anywhere. because an alcoholic, once we have alcohol in us, the only thing we're thinking about is where can I get a next drink? Or if the alcohol's starting to come out of us, we're starting to detox, we'll be shaking or sweating or going into the DTs or whatever. And you really have to get all of that stuff out of the alcoholic before there's any chance of doing anything. And then he talks about the allergy, the one symptom of alcoholism, the first symptom, if you want to call it that, the phenomenon of cravings. This is something that only happens to us. It does not happen to other people. And what an allergy is an abnormal reaction to a food or a drink or a substance that we're exposed to. And approximately 10% of the population is alcoholic. So that means about 90% of the people do not experience the phenomenon of cravings. Like was already mentioned, you see people, they'll leave half a glass of wine and then they'll walk away. I went to weddings after I had gotten sober, and I was amazed because I thought everybody drank like me. And I was amazed when the wedding was over, the reception was over, and everybody was leaving. I looked around at the tables, and I swear most of the tables had glasses that were still half full. They didn't get rid of, I couldn't understand that. I thought everybody drank every single drop that they got. And most of the people don't. They leave half a drink and they walk away. They don't experience the same thing that I experience when I drink. When I drink, I get every last drop, turn the glass upside down and squeeze it, trying to get the last drop out. I don't understand people that just drink half a drink and walk away. Just like they're not going to be able to understand why I have to drink every single thing that I have. We're different. In that respect, we are different. We're our own separate entity. This only happens to us. So if you're an alcoholic and you take a drink, you're not going to be able to stop. I've heard people say it makes you more thirsty. Well, whatever you want to call it. Once we take a drink, and that's the point this doctor's trying to get across to us here. When we drink, we can't stop. We have to have more. We experience the phenomenon of cravings, and that does not happen to other people. Basically, that's pretty much what he's trying to get across to us here. And once we understand that, then we realize that we need to look for a solution so that we don't have to drink when we don't want to drink. And that's going to be a whole other thing. But thanks a lot for letting me share. And again, Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year, Bill.
Yep.
Thank you very much, as always.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're a couple of minutes prior to the top of the hour. We'll go ahead and close, Rob, and then we'll just open it up for comment and discussion.
Perfect. The serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Well, again, Happy New Year, everybody. And I'm glad that you were here today, and hope to see you next Saturday, same time.
Great way to start out the new year. Thanks, Leo.
You bet,
Rob.
Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Great to see you, sir. Anybody got any questions for Leo?
I've got a question for you, Rob.
Uh-oh. Yes, Damon.
How many languages do you speak fluently?
I have enough trouble with English.
Well, you pronounced them too in that third, the preface to the third so well. I thought, geez, you must know a lot of languages.
I'm an alcoholic. I bluff my way through everything.
Yeah. Thanks, all. Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
David.
Yeah, that's one of the worst questions. That's one of the annoying questions I get is like when they say, why can't you just stop after a drink, or why can't you just stop after two? Why can't you drink like a normal person? And I don't even answer it. I'm like, I don't know why I can't. I'm like, if I could, I wish I could, but I can't, and just by reading and going to these readings, like, yeah, we're alcoholics, right? Where our bodies are different. Our minds are different, how I also get mad at people who can drink normally, like after, a drink or two drinks, and they're okay. Next thing you know, they're drinking coffee or something else. And, for me, it's where's my next drink? And I want to keep drinking more. And, I just wish that people who aren't alcoholics, would also understand where we're coming from, right? Because it gets annoying when your wife or your father or, people are like, why can't you just stop? Like, why do you have to be like this? And it's like, like if I knew, I would tell you, right? And I'm glad that we're going through these readings because it's explaining a lot. But for the non-alcoholics, it's annoying, or for the people who can drink normally, it's annoying when they ask that to me, and I get a little anger built up. So, but I'm trying to get better at it.
Oh, Mike, what did you learn today? That we suffer from an allergy, which creates the phenomenon of craving. Okay, so that once we take any alcohol whatsoever into our system, it triggers the allergy, which makes me drink more. My body wants more. I can't control that. So you suffer from an allergy. That's all you have to do. Tell them I suffer from an allergy. And then if you want to get into more
Yeah.
detail, by all means. But do you understand that you suffer from an allergy?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the first step that goes in, and that's it. It's like
Yeah.
it just, it turns the wheels inside, right? So,
Yep. Another thing too, Mike, and I'm not sure of your family situation, but one of the things that I have found that's been very successful for me in helping me with my recovery and sobriety is to include my wife, to include my sons, and to include my brothers in my recovery. And what I would encourage you to do is to take a few minutes and just sit down, say with your wife or your father or somebody, and start to kind of talk to them about what you are actually learning in the book. And as this group knows, if you've been with me for any length of time, three things that I encourage you to do, and that is to focus on the person at hand, persuade them through involvement, and then earn the right to advance. And what I'm talking about here is, in our case, we're focusing on you, the alcoholic, and I am getting you kind of involved in the process. It isn't just reading the book. It isn't me as a sponsor just saying, hey, Mike, read the book and then tell me what you think about it and stuff. We're actually truly trying to get you to understand what the book is trying to say. And we're not interpreting it in any other way. And it's not Leo's interpretation. This is just directly telling you what the book is saying. And by involving you in that part, you get persuaded into the idea of what this is as being an alcoholic. And then as you get persuaded and understand it, then we continue to advance and to the next topic and the next idea and the next portion of the solution of this. So if you were to turn the table on this and to work with others in your family and to get them involved in your recovery so that they are learning alongside you, they become supportive more so in your recovery. And if you've got family members around you that are supportive in a positive manner, not just the negative, like, either don't drink or else. I mean, how many times have I heard that where it was an or else, kind of thing? Well, that's negative reinforcement. Okay. You're being put on the spot. You're being given, an ultimatum, and that's hard to work with. I mean, it's a motivator, don't get me wrong, but if you were to get your wife or your father involved to the point of understanding what it is that you're going through, then I would tell you that you would actually find yourself in a much more supportive atmosphere, much more positive atmosphere, and in much more understanding. And so then their anxiety would then be lowered, and at the same time, their support for you would be increased. So in so many ways. So I guess what I want to say is just, take that under consideration, because this is just as an important book. In fact, both of my boys, one is an alcoholic, the other one is not, but both of my boys have this book, and I've encouraged both of them. I mean, the one that's an alcoholic, he works through the program as best he can. But my other son, who's not an alcoholic, I've asked him just to read it and incorporate some of the ideas that are in here. Because it is kind of a nice way to go through life. But anyway, my main message is to try to include them in your recovery and teach them or show them or share with them, the idea that's being presented in this book, the solution. And it'll help them to understand you better, which means they'll be more supportive of you.
I agree. Thank you for that.
Anybody else have a question?
It's not really that much of a question, but this is a section. I'm just coming off almost 16 months of sobriety, and I had a relapse just after Christmas. Some crappy circumstances leading up to that, and I stopped going to AA many months before that. I just find it kind of interesting because I always had one foot in and the other foot out, and this is a section to me that I skipped over, just like the first part we read, the foreword to the 4th edition. Like, I always skipped over this stuff because I thought that it was irrelevant to me, but it's been really enlightening, hearing Rob, hearing you read, and thank you, by the way, for inviting me to this. And then, hearing an explanation and a breakdown for all this stuff. And I got a lot of information out of it. And I'm hoping that, this couldn't have came at a greater time. I mean, you guys are restarting the whole book right after my relapse. So I'm really grateful for that, for you guys, and to I want to say higher power for hooking this up, because the timing is very nice. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks.
Absolutely, Alex. You're exactly right. And I'm glad that I'm sorry that you didn't have the beginning of the book, and I kind of broke down. I will tell you that this is the way we're going to work through the rest of the book, is going to be by explaining each of the, it's a line by line. So, whether it's a portion of a paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs or whatever, we will explain in detail everything that's in this book. So hopefully that will be of benefit to you as we go forward. So I'm glad we caught you when we did. And again, I'll even thank Rob for inviting you as well. So thanks, Rob.
And Alex,
Yeah.
I just sent you a text.
I got your text. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get together in 5 minutes under that other Zoom number, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, brother.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too, guy.
All right, guys. I'm gonna wait and hop on to the 2 o'clock, I guess, and then.
Okay,
the 5
Mike,
o'clock.
we'll see you later, guy.
Yep.
Okay,
Remember,
thanks
you
a
got
lot.
our phone number, so don't hesitate to use them, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. You guys are doing great work.
Thanks.
Thank
brother.
you.
Thanks,
Happy
Mike.
New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Happy New Year's, guys. Happy
Yep.
New Year's, guys. Great
Yeah,
job here,
Pete.
Rob. Love you guys.
Love you too, man. Always.
You be good, Pete.
All right. You betcha. You too.
Okay, I got to drop off too, because I'm meeting with Alex for a little bit.
Perfect, Rob. Thanks for everything. And
Leo, thank you. Great
Yep.
job again today, as always.
absolutely. Same
We'll talk to you
you.
during the week.
Yep, that sounds good. Take care, guys.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.